Alrighty, guys. Seems like we're back together again tonight. How are you doing? I hope everybody's doing all right. Boots, Claire, R. Gertison. We've got a few people here tonight. Pastor Carner's out at the gold mines. He's got a little vacation that he's taking some time off and enjoying it a little bit. So we'll give him the next few days. Let's see if I can get the chat going. There we go. So I'll try to read this. Tonight's just going to be kind of like a relaxed stream, nothing too crazy. I'm going to use it to kind of promote some of the new content that I'm doing, and I'll just make some comments on it. What I'd also like to do is I'd really like to get your opinions on this. I'm happy to answer questions as it comes up in your mind. So this project that I'm working on, there's 2 episodes, so I'm going to play both of those for you tonight. I'm taking the book by Fritz Springmeier, the Illuminati formula book, which is a manual of sorts to the MK Ultra program. It's one of the best that I've actually seen. And so I thought that deserved a more precise look. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing a deep dive summary chapter by chapter, and then I'll edit them into video episodes. So those would be about 20 to 30 minutes each, and we've done 2. So those are going to be on my YouTube channel and my Rumble, which I'm going to leave links to all of those when I update the show afterwards. And those should be coming each Wednesday. As of now, it'll be Wednesday at around noon Eastern time. So expect those, and those will just go through the entire entire book until we're done with it. I might add some additional details and whatnot. So you guys are kind of going to be my review team, my quality assurance team. But I honestly, anything you want to ask, I'll attempt to answer, because it's important for you guys to understand that part of my process is talking and asking questions. So if you guys ask me questions, or you guys kind of participate in the dialogue over these episodes, it will help me very much. And I add in the notes and additional slides and additional information when I edit the videos together. So the way that I do these is I just feed the entire book chapter by chapter to Notebook LM, which is by Google, and it will generate like a bunch of notes. I can ask it questions. I can tell it to clarify certain things, and it will generate a conversation back and forth between 2 people. So what then I do is I'll take that conversation and I'll edit a video together with that. I'll put the video together, and I will also listen along as I'm editing, and I'll pop in my own notes, and I'll offer my own understanding on certain things. So it's kind of a learning experience, and I just honestly like to get your opinions on it. So with that being said, guys, I got a little bit of music to play us in for tonight. So we'll go ahead and get the music playing, get your hearts pumping, and then while I'm letting you guys listen to that, I'll rig up the episode and we'll go straight into it. So I appreciate all of you being here. It's great to be in front of the audience again while Pastor Carner's out, and he should be back, I believe he said Sunday night. So let's go ahead and get into it, guys.
Yeah. DJ Shadow up in this motherfucker. David Banner. Shadow, you got some nuts for this one, baby. Swear I'm seeing something. Swear I'm seeing. Yeah. Swear I'm seeing something. Swear I'm seeing. Yeah. 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 I hear voices whisper to me, gotta kill yourself. And I call on the Lord, pain doesn't ease from well. These cars, these clothes, these hoes never meant nothing. Having nightmares, screaming and busting at my enemy. I put a bullet in that nigga and I see it's me. Is it my soul killing self-hate? Or does that nigga in me have to die before I reach the pearly gates? Either way, I got something to say. Jam Master Jay used to deal walk this way, but it's hard to walk like a man the industry's day. And these the same motherfuckers that's controlling my cash, and the same ones in government controlling your ass. Why George was in jail for stealing them votes? Why the CIA ain't closed, man, for pushing that dope? Get it cracked in America, the CIA, aka the KKK, judge the day. See it, I can swear it, see it,
situation. There's no plan B, plan A. These people are very desperate.
Tell them that we need to get out of here.
In a Chevy, I wondered if the feds broke the levee. Are they in with the devil to control the weather? Hurricanes and typhoons every other week, while poor folks are grinding in the middle of the street. We too scared to speak or too busy on the internet. I heard they rock to put low jacks in our kids' necks. Martial law, tell Bush, nah, we ain't ready to flip. The hood is like a modern slave ship. We pack like sardines and shackled to the street. And crack is cotton that grows up from the concrete. Shit. But I guess I'm seeing things. We'd rather not learn, we'd rather fucking gang bang.
I very strongly suggest people be very careful about the TV shows they watch.
What if the big events, the direction of the 20th century wasn't quite what it seemed? Like maybe there were hidden hands involved?
It's, well, a provocative thought to start with.
Right. And it leads us straight into today's topic. We're diving deep into something really unsettling, highly secretive. It's based on the material you, our listener, actually shared with us.
That's right. The book, The Illuminati Formula Used to Create an Undetectable Total Mind-Controlled Slave by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier.
Yeah, quite a title. And definitely not light reading.
No, it's challenging material.
Mm-hmm.
And your willingness, to even engage with these kinds of disturbing allegations, it's really noteworthy.
So our mission today, what are we trying to do here?
Well, the goal is basically to pull out the core claims of this supposed formula. We're focusing on how they allegedly selected victims, prepared them, and the very first steps in creating what the book calls a mind-controlled slave.
Okay. And just to be super clear up front.
Absolutely crucial. We're only talking about what's in this book, nothing more.
Exactly. We're not saying this is true. We're not endorsing it, especially any, political stuff in there.
No opinions, no validation, just exploring the text itself.
Think of it like your shortcut through this really dense, frankly shocking material. We're trying to pull out the key moments, the aha bits maybe, without you having to wade through everything.
Hopefully making a very complex, very dark topic a bit more understandable just by looking at what the authors wrote.
Okay, so let's start unpacking it. What's the absolute core claim of this book?
The fundamental idea, really, is that there's this systematic method, a step-by-step process.
Developed by who?
Supposedly by groups like, well, the Illuminati, obviously, given the title, and maybe elements within intelligence agencies.
And the goal?
To create people who are totally mind-controlled, using trauma, severe trauma.
Which leads to the multiple personalities.
That's the claim, what we now call dissociative identity disorder, or DID. They argue it's deliberately induced through this trauma-based programming.
The book seems pretty upfront about how serious it considers this. The dedication and warning, right?
Oh, absolutely. It starts with a dedication to uh, millions of Americans, the authors claim, were programmed this way. The stated goal is exposure, dismantling this whole thing.
And the warning.
It's stark. A very strong caution to any reader who thinks they might have gone through this kind of mind control, saying, digging into this stuff without professional help could be dangerous.
Dangerous how?
Potentially severe psychological distress, it says. Even potentially fatal consequences if someone under mind control uncovers things without guidance. They explicitly say they're not responsible if the information is misused.
I'd also like to talk more about my when I was used in Boise for an assassination attempt. This took place where I was placed on top of Zion's Bank, and I was going to be made to shoot a man who was coming out of the Neurolox. But not only was I supposed to shoot the man coming out of the Neurolox, the whole assassination was going to be covered up under the guise of a mass shooting. So I was supposed to unload my weapon on the entire crowd of people coming out of the bar at 2 a.m, all being kicked out of the bar. I was supposed to kill the target. One of my friend's sisters had seen me in the bar. She had almost compromised me, and she was to be second. That was to be executed, was her. I was supposed to shoot the target, and then I was supposed to shoot her. And then I was supposed to unload my weapon on everyone. And that whole thing broke down. My programming broke down. I had been smoking marijuana with a couple friends of mine a short time before all that went down. Marijuana is the only drug that I know of that mind slaves aren't allowed to have. We were fed all kinds of drugs in the project. I witnessed people doing coke. I was made to do LSD. I was made to take all kinds of things. I don't even know what they were. We called them potions, and my uncle had this little black box filled with vials that he called potions, and they'd always be giving those to me when we were on operation. But yeah, a very bad deal.
Wow. Okay, that sets a heavy tone right away. So who are the people making these claims, the authors?
Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier. The book mentions their alleged experience and research in this area. They apparently worked together before on a related book about monarch mind control.
And Springmeier, he wrote other stuff too.
Yeah. Individually, he researched the Illuminati, wrote the top 13 Illuminati families, apparently. They present themselves as having, direct experience with people who claim they were monarch programmed.
And Fritz Springmeier wrote the introduction himself. I remember it being pretty forceful.
Extremely forceful. He flat out states that this trauma-based mind control, as they describe it, is the, quote, greatest danger to the human race.
Wow.
Yeah. He connects its supposed effectiveness directly to secrecy.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Saying these organizations couldn't hide their dark, evil deeds without this kind of sophisticated control.
He also talks about where these techniques supposedly came from historically.
Right. The book suggests it wasn't invented overnight. It claims the techniques evolved over centuries within, like German, Scottish, Italian, English Illuminati families.
Going back how far?
Some accounts mention trace it all the way back to ancient Egypt, Babylon, mystery religions. That's quite a claim.
And more recently.
It highlights Nazi interest, specifically. Early German research on, personality switching and even demonic possession. It names Trogat Konstantin Osterreich, an early 20th century researcher.
Okay. And intelligence agencies get pulled in too.
Allegedly, yes.
Yeah.
MI6 is mentioned early on in the 20th century. But the book also claims their records were routinely destroyed or manipulated. Hard to verify, obviously.
Convenient, maybe.
Well, that's the narrative presented. Then the Candy Jones case comes up. That's supposedly when the secrecy started to crack a bit.
And that led to...
According to the book, it led to the whole false memory syndrome campaign as a way to discredit victims and cover things up again. Of course, the history and interpretation here are highly debated outside of this text.
It definitely sounds like they're trying to build this picture of a really old, really hidden practice. And then there's that analogy they use, the recipe.
Yeah, they're very direct about that. The book says its goal is to give you a step-by-step recipe for making a monarch mind-controlled slave.
A recipe.
That's the term they use. They argue if you understand the ingredients and the process, then the possibility, the motive behind it all becomes clear. They even say they'll name names and places.
Okay, let's get into this recipe then. The first science they outline is the selection and preparation of the victim. What's involved in that initial stage?
It covers several key things. First off, genetics, or at least the belief in a genetic component.
Genetics for what?
For the ability to dissociate. You know, that psychological process where your mind kind of checks out under extreme stress. It's central to developing multiple personalities under trauma.
And they think that's inherited.
The book claims it is, yeah.
Right.
It gives examples like certain American Indian tribes, Indian fakirs, yogis, Tibetan Buddhists, Vodun practitioners, even children from families with multi-generational abuse.
Right, those groups.
Because they supposedly show a natural tendency towards dissociation, which European occultists allegedly studied way back. They even claim there's a test done around 18 months old to see how dissociative a child is, to see if they're a good candidate for programming.
And the selection, it's not the same for everyone, right? It depends on the goal.
Exactly. The book makes this distinction between Illuminati hierarchy slaves and expendable slaves.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Hierarchy slaves, they're described as having hidden family backgrounds, really elaborate cover stories, lots of layers of programming, often used to program others, apparently. And the abuse
this part
is
right here,
supposedly
let me pause
less
it.
obvious
This
physically.
is a,
And the expendable ones.
a
They're
part
depicted
that
more-
I wanted to highlight. This here is something that potentially an average person would be able to really understand. This comes from J.R. Sweet, who was in that last slide. He was part of Mormon LDS monarch system, and he details a test that was done to them as children. 1 second, let me get my camera back up. A test that was done to them as children, and what this test was is that they would bring these children back into a room one by one, and what they would do is they would show, I don't know, let's just say like a 6, 7, 8-year-old kid. They would show the child a severed human hand, like a hand in the box. And so, it's a kid. So a lot of the kids would just, they would scream. I mean, that's what you do if you're a kid and you see a hand in a shoebox. But they were looking for children who had a high ability to dissociate trauma. They needed children with high dissociative abilities. And so the kids that would not scream, they would kind of just go blank in the face. And for me, I recognize that because sometimes I wonder, it's like right now, I'm 25, almost about to be 26. If that happened to me right now, I probably would be silent. I would probably just kind of look and dissociate. So that's what dissociation is, and that is how they would test for children who would make good candidates. That's a really good thing to understand, a good point to remember. So I just wanted to pause and make sure everyone understood that.
Whereas like sex slaves, people used for sabotage, breeders, soldiers, drug mules, often with visible scars from torture.
Where do these expendable slaves supposedly come from?
The book claims they're often children whose parents were blackmailed or forced by the CIA, or maybe sold by parents involved in pedophilia or pornography rings, supposedly hidden under the National Security Act.
That's great.
And it gets worse. The book alleges these expendable slaves are programmed knowing they'll likely be killed or thrown from the freedom train, as the supposed code phrase goes.
Alex Huxley, in his novel Brave New World, laid out the various levels of humanity that the occult wishes to make permanent. In regards to Lucifer's plans for you, you will have heard that there are alpha males, beta bureaucrats, gamma servants, delta builders,
I'm a mechanical boy,
and epsilon moron menial laborers.
Around age 30.
And the book singles out certain types of parents?
Yes, it makes some really disturbing claims. It says pedophile fathers are, quote, most preferred for offering their kids for programming.
Why?
because they're seen as having less conscience, easier to keep manipulating. It contrasts them with fathers who might molest older daughters, who are seen as having too much conscience for the programmer's liking.
This is deeply unpleasant stuff.
It really is. And the book connects this all back to the CIA and the Illuminati early on.
How does it describe that connection?
It claims the Illuminati were behind the creation of the CIA, that some CIA directors were even Illuminati members.
A symbiotic relationship.
That's the idea. The CIA acts as a kind of front, because the Illuminati itself needs secrecy, needs these other organizations to operate through.
Like programming sites.
Exactly. State mental hospitals, McGill University's psychiatric network, NASA in Huntsville, the Presidio military base, China Lake. These are named as examples. Even the alleged takeover of Boys Town in the 50s is mentioned as a source for children.
And is there a main figure they point to who supposedly got this large-scale programming going?
According to this source, yes. Joseph Mengele.
Mengele, the Nazi doctor.
The very same. The book claims he was the original lead programmer for this monarch programming. It says he had a high rank in the Illuminati, skills in music, Kabbalah, magic, dancing, abortions, torture.
Torture skills attributed to his sadistic mother, the text notes.
Right, and child programming. It alleges many kids he programmed in the camps actually survived, and some even had bizarrely positive feelings towards him.
How did he end up involved after the war, according to this book?
It claims he was smuggled into the U.S. after Auschwitz disappeared, specifically to use his knowledge more broadly. Traveled a lot, often with black servants, apparently.
And survivors supposedly remembered him.
The book claims survivors recall his German uniform, boots, accent, his whole manner. It suggests his notorious selections at Auschwitz were partly about choosing subjects for these mind-control trauma experiments, especially identical twins for the genetic angle.
It's almost impossible to fathom that level of claimed cruelty. We have to stress, these are claims from the book, Mengele's documented atrocities or historical fact, but this specific narrative comes from this source.
Absolutely. Extreme caution is needed here. The book then contrasts the programming methods used before Mengele with what came after.
How so?
It says the pre-Mengele Illuminati techniques were maybe less sophisticated than what the Nazi Germans developed, which allegedly pulled research from all over Europe.
But the suffering was the same.
The book emphasizes that, yes. For children born into Illuminati families, the programming is supposedly planned by the circle before they're even born, different from kids taken from foster care or sold.
And these hierarchy kids then program others.
That's the claim. Hierarchy slaves program and train other hierarchy children. Others are just seen as expendable. It mentions this group, Mariah, the Illuminati, having huge numbers, and all members supposedly get some mind control, even if not full DD.
And normal therapy wouldn't work for them.
Dismissed as totally inadequate for someone born into that system, according to the text.
So how do kids outside these alleged Illuminati lines get drawn in?
Well, the book describes this awful alleged practice. Children in foster homes, adoptive situations, orphanages, maybe living with non-relatives, being sold to intelligence agencies because they're vulnerable.
Sold for mind control.
That's the allegation. And because so many organizations are supposedly controlled by the Illuminati network, a programmed person might seem to work for one group, but the Illuminati have the underlying control.
So they can be moved around.
Apparently. Used across different parts of this network, like Delta models for assassinations within Delta Force, Beta models for sexual purposes, specific roles.
The initial preparation sounds incredibly detailed, focusing on senses and intelligence.
Oh yeah, the book gets specific. How interactions with babies are supposedly designed to maximize brain development in certain areas, using visual matching games, full sensory training.
Birth programming from birth.
Pretty much. Brawn dams involved allegedly show faces, objects, to create mirror images in the baby's mind, training all the senses for this mirroring purpose, teaching the baby to copy, reflect, repeat.
Intelligence is important too.
Seen as essential, yeah. Intelligence and creativity. Methods are supposedly used to boost these even psychic abilities, allegedly. Head programmers have these mottos about needing a structured mind in the slave, starting right from birth.
Then this name comes up, John Gittinger. Who was he?
Gittinger is presented as really key, especially for understanding the infant mind. A psychologist, worked in mental assessment for years.
Where'd he work?
Directed psychological services at a state hospital in Oklahoma, the book says, and then got involved with the CIA's MK Ultra program around 1950.
MK Ultra, the real mind control program.
Right. And his work on personality assessment was supposedly super classified, vital to monarch programming, according to this book.
And his big contribution was the PAS, Personality Assessment System. Tell us about that.
The PAS, yeah. It's described as this incredible way to evaluate behavior, predict actions. A lot of it's still classified, the book claims.
How did it work?
It's reportedly based on sorting people along 3 main scales: internalizer, externalizer, or EII, regulated flexible RF, and role adaptive role uniform, AU.
So like personality types?
Kind of. And the book claims a baby's initial score on these scales is mostly innate, and it predicts their future role, how they should be programmed.
Any examples?
Like an IFA profile supposedly points to someone who could be a social or religious reformer, so the programming would be tailored for that. It mentions personality can change later through compensation or modification.
It sounds really complex.
Extremely detailed, apparently. Huge number of possible personality types, allowing for very specific programming. Gittinger's understanding, combined with the PAS, supposedly gave him this deep insight into minds, which he then allegedly used for programming kids.
And they used EEG brain scans, too. How did that fit in?
The book claims EEG patterns correlate with part of the PAS, specifically the digit span test for memory, which relates to that EI dimension.
So EEG could help assess personality.
Supposedly, yeah. Helped get around cultural biases and, crucially, allowed them to assess babies before they could talk. It cites some research from the 60s by Saunders and Mundy-Castle linking brainwaves and cognition.
What was the EEG procedure like, according to the book?
It describes electrodes placed on a small child's head, repeated testing, attendants telling the child to stay completely still. The pattern supposedly revealed the child's PAS type.
And the PAS revealed weaknesses, too.
Yeah, it allegedly showed a person's vulnerabilities, their desires, the book calls them soft spots, and also how easily hypnotizable they were.
What if a child wasn't easily hypnotized?
They might be rejected from the program, the book says, or subjected to more extreme methods to force compliance.
The book then lists a ton of organizations allegedly part of this mind control network.
Oh, it's a massive list. It covers everything. Intelligence agencies, CIA, FBI, NSA, military intelligence.
Religious groups.
Yep. Catholic Church, Jesuits, Church of Satan, Scientology, Mormons.
Secret societies, entertainment, crime.
Freemasons, OTO, Hollywood, country music, pro-baseball, mafia, KKK, even the Russian government and intelligence.
Yeah.
It's incredibly broad.
And the point is?
The book emphasizes this network is the backbone of the planned New World Order. And the Illuminati are supposedly involved at every level as perpetrators and sometimes even as victims within their own system.
Okay, after all that setup, the book gets into 4 foundational stages for the programming itself. Let's take the first one. Spiritual preparations and in utero traumatization, the Moon Children. That title alone.
Yeah, it's disturbing. This first stage, as described, is about spiritual preparations and deliberately traumatizing the child in the womb.
Spiritual preparations? Like what?
It talks about generational satanic families. Their children are allegedly considered Satan's property, making them ideal for programming and for layering in demonic forces through blood rituals.
And moonchild rituals.
These are described as ceremonies to demonize the fetus with powerful demons, requiring blood, human sacrifices. It brings in Aleister Crowley.
Crowley, the occultist.
Described here as a Satanist, Freemason, OTO leader, and alleged MI6 agent. His book Moonchild is discussed. It's about capturing a soul into a body. The book interprets parts of it symbolically, like a villa called Butterfly Net, linking butterflies to souls or demons, and the Monarch Project name.
So the rituals are based on Crowley's work.
The book claims the actual rituals are detailed in his writings: moon temples, invocations, symbolic acts, and this alleged demonization of the fetus, supposedly kept secret from most of the slaves' future personalities, the alters.
Anything else in this stage?
The claim that the Illuminati intentionally set up the child's life to violate the 10 Commandments, like encouraging birth out of wedlock, and the in utero trauma itself.
How would they do that?
Physically, using needles on the fetus is one claim. Psychologically, by severely traumatizing the pregnant mother abandonment, loud noises followed suddenly by love, drawing on alleged observations of high-level satanic families and Italian witchcraft traditions.
Okay, that's stage 1. Stage 2 is the trauma of a premature birth. Why premature?
The book argues a premature birth is preferred because of the natural trauma it causes the baby. It even cites stats linking preemies to later child abuse.
So they induce it.
That's the claim, sometimes deliberately induced. Using special drugs to put the mother in a deep trance during early labor, then shocking her out of it for delivery, supposedly creates massive stress for both.
And this links to a breeder system.
Yeah, another disturbing concept. Women, sometimes preemies themselves, allegedly use just to produce babies for programming or sacrifice, with a limit, maybe 2-3 preemie births because of the risk to the mother.
Hospitals are involved.
Hospitals in certain cities are alleged to be infiltrated by occult-loyal doctors and nurses who help facilitate these premature births for programming, targeting low-income mothers sometimes.
Is there a reason why the trauma of being premature is useful, according to the book?
It supposedly creates a fighter spirit in the baby, needed to survive the later tortures. It also mentions how standard medical care for preemies, catheters, IVs, oxygen naturally contributes to this early trauma. And preemies tend to be, more sober, less socially interactive.
And the programmers take advantage of this.
Absolutely. A deliberate effort, the book claims, to make sure the baby's first sight is a future programmer, using loving tones to create that first bond. Mengele was supposedly an expert at this.
Seeing the child as
a piece of clay, malleable, using a soothing voice to exploit the baby's already dissociated state, planting hypnotic suggestions early on.
Teaching the child what?
To see the programmer as basically God, the controller of life, to be worshipped. Plus, early cognitive training, subliminal tapes, accelerated reading methods, and specific hypnosis techniques for preverbal babies. Rubbing, stroking, gentle female programmers often used, and strict obedience training, like taping the mouth shut to stop crying.
Then step 3 sounds almost opposite. Love bombing the child until about 18 months.
It seems paradoxical, right? But the book explains this intense love is only given so it can be traumatically taken away later.
So it's strategic love.
Entirely strategic. Illuminati kids aren't spanked during this time, apparently, just lovingly controlled. Focus on positive development, cleanliness, preparing them for the later trauma, essentially.
And the dissociation is already there.
Yeah, the book reminds us dissociation is already present from genetics, maybe the premature birth. The child builds this exclusive bond of trust, obedience, adoration only with the programmer, and their mind is aligning with all the hypnotic cues being fed to them.
Which leads directly to the 4th step, fracturing the mind. This is where the split happens.
This is it. It builds on the dissociation from steps 1 and 2 and uses the love bond from step 3 as leverage.
How does the fracturing work?
For preemies, the mind often splits along the fault lines already created by that birth trauma, the book suggests. For other babies, they induce dissociation by overwhelming the senses foul smells, feeding blood, chanting, noise, spinning, sleep deprivation, drugs. It mentions eyewitness reports of kids looking like zombies, totally numb.
And then the love bombing ends.
Abruptly and brutally, stripping away the love, subjecting the child to torment, caging, starving, freezing, electric shocks.
And when the programmer reappears,
the child is desperate, relieved, highly dissociated. Then the programmer shows a vicious side. That betrayal, the abuse coming from the figure they loved and trusted. That's what supposedly forces the mind to split along those pre-existing lines.
The double bind concept.
Exactly. Holding two totally opposite, irreconcilable views of someone crucial. That's presented as the core splitting mechanism. It cites a dissertation by Jody Leonhardt on this.
So the ability to dissociate comes from genetics, birth trauma, and this conditioning.
That's the formula presented.
Yep.
Genetics, maybe traumatic birth, and conditioning via shock, sensory overload, sleep deprivation, drugs, all happening at the initial programming center. This first sadistic abuse to split the mind. They call it severing the core.
Severing the core. What is the core in their view?
Okay, this is important. For the programmers, the core isn't really an alter personality. It's more like the original unsplit essence of the mind, the energy source for the whole system of alters.
And they don't touch it.
They try not to. They want to hide it, wall it off, because the mind instinctively protects it. It might even sabotage therapy if the core feels threatened.
So they separate it from the alters.
Deliberately. They supposedly figured out in the 1940s that if the core connected with the alters, the person might reintegrate, heal. So they hide the core, often deep within the first splits, dehumanizing these parts into things like gems or crystals. Yeah, symbolic representations that supposedly power the system. They might create a dissociative carousel around the core, too, like a barrier. And the toddler switch is mentioned as the first foundational split.
So there isn't one real person in charge.
The major mistake that therapists make when trying to heal Luciferian ritualized abuse is that they believe that somewhere within the victim is the real person, and that all the rest are merely subordinate alters. While it is true that the individual's spirit within holds the pure mind of the person, if the elements that make up the person's physical personality are fractured from birth, then the personality is fractured. Many of these fractures have been built into full-blown personalities with separate memories. Thus, there is no single, real physical personality. It is more like a mirror that has been broken.
Not in the way we usually think, just walled-off fragments. They might even program mock cores, alters that think they're the core, often in denial about the whole situation. They even misuse Bible verses in programming related to the core, apparently.
What about those first splits? Are they important?
Very. They're stronger, closer to the original mind, but unwanted splits get thrown into mental garbage dumps. These splits can happen really early, even in the womb, which is why doing step 4 around 18 months is supposedly crucial to stop them merging back together.
And they use these early splits.
Some are used as strong front alters, the ones interacting with the world. They also create decoys, opposing alters, like one who loves the programmer, one who hates them, to keep therapists busy, chasing shadows.
It sounds like a constantly shifting maze.
Exactly. The whole alter system is designed to shift, hide. They use layers, demonic influence, hypnotic illusions to obscure who's who.
Any other tricks mentioned?
Encouraging early front splits to accept Christianity, apparently to make the trauma worse when they later create satanic altars. Needing a balance of capabilities in the system so it doesn't become purely evil and unstable. Creating mirror images of altars.
And the bottom line is?
As long as dissociation exists, the programmers can keep manipulating. Integration is possible, the book says, but only if the deprogrammer understands all these layers and tricks. It also notes that as people get older, the memory walls might weaken, leading to flashbacks, but that might just be dismissed as senility.
Okay, the chapter wraps up with a few more points on selection, doesn't it? Beyond genetics and age.
Right. Physical traits are mentioned. Preferred types are allegedly blue-eyed, blonde Caucasians, no visible defects or scars. Similar to Masonic criteria, the book claims.
And the timing.
Trauma-based control usually starts before age 6. It can happen later, but the trauma-induced splits are supposedly better hidden than purely hypnotic ones. Not everyone claimed to be an SRA survivor necessarily has a full alter system, though.
But the book focuses on the infant programming.
So,
yes, the monarch systems created by programming infants are presented as the most devastating and effective method. It also loops back to alleged Catholic Church and Jesuit involvement, claiming they believe they can control destiny through early programming, the keys to the kingdom.
Let's drag some of this history into the light by stepping into the darkness. Or as the Luciferians say, let's turn the key of the kingdom.
What about programming adults?
Briefly mentioned. Criteria
basic
include
training,
dissociation ability,
prisons,
availability,
jails,
military tests, school records,
any type of military
potential outcomes,
order.
working for intelligence, becoming POWs, ending up in mental hospitals, working for Illuminati-linked companies, or even becoming actors.
And the needs differ. Intelligence agencies versus Illuminati.
Yeah,
Jesuit
intel agencies might want more
That's
external
very
control.
true.
The Illuminati, needing total secrecy, require deeper fail-safe systems. It mentions demonic imps, layered in again to guard memories, needing specific therapeutic approaches.
Any other programmer types?
A brief mention of renegade Illuminati programmers, who can supposedly program non-Illuminati kids effectively.
So the takeaway from this whole section is
that it's all highly planned, incredibly precise, total control over the slave's life, different uses for different people, and the programming itself is designed to be unbreakable.
wow. Okay. This first deep dive into just the selection and preparation, it's been, undeniably disturbing. Incredibly detailed.
It paints a truly chilling picture, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Systematic manipulation on just a staggering scale, according to this source.
And for you listening, the person who got this source to us, we get it. It's just shocking information. It's a lot.
Yeah, so that was the first episode, the first chapter. And again, these are going to be chapter by chapter breakdowns. Really, the idea for that first chapter was that these systems, how many, you're going to Google how many Illuminati in your city. The best way that I could explain it is if you want to know who these people are, they're not necessarily people who have done an initiation ritual. They don't have to have, a special ring. They don't have to be a Freemason. Many are, but essentially, they are illuminated enough to know how to screw people over and make money. That's what being a Mahon is. A Mahon is somebody who's weaponized secrets to gain. It's like uh, a business uses trade secrets. That is technically someone who may say they're illumined in the way that, uh, well, it turns out if we just cut all of our products with this poisonous preservative, we can make a lot of money. Or if I'm illuminated enough to realize that letting that airplane crash is going to be cheaper than recalling it because of the parts, well, then I'm a smart person. And they don't see this torture as torture. What they actually believe is that they're helping their children be strong adults. Strength conditioning is what this really is. It is that if a child is beat and given tough love, they call it tough love, then obviously they're going to be a good CEO, a good businessman, because or a good politician, a good military army general. It's like, yeah, I have no issue ordering a bombing of an entire town if I feel nothing, and to them that's strength. And it's important to understand. I can't say this for sure. I can't say 100%, but I would be comfortable saying at least 80% of people in successful positions, CEOs, top military posts, uh, actors, Hollywood, and there's a good amount of proof for this, are sociopaths, psychopaths. A good majority of that, a subset, probably has a formal MK Ultra monarch experience, either raised in or been a part of or privy to. Now this is kind of making its way out into society. It's in the music, it's in the movies, and you're never going to be fully immune to it. But what I will say is that if you are aware that it's real and you have a basic grasp of how this conditioning works, you can at least have it in the back of your mind and you'll be asking yourself questions about it. So, for instance, I'll listen to a song, like a newer song that came out. For the record, I don't really care for much newer music. I'll listen to it and I'll listen to the words, and the beat's okay, but I'm listening to the words and I say, what are they trying to tell me? What's the message here? Why are we listening to a song about this, like, okay, this person's trying to air out, they're trying to express their feelings, that's fine. But why is it that so many of these songs are using this same repetitive logic? Stunt to future parents before they can have babies. I just figured out that I could do this here. I could pop that up there. If there's someone says something, I can click it and put it up there for everyone else to see. So C. Claire says there should be some kind of moral/mental test done to future parents before they're going to have babies. Yeah, in a perfect world, there should be. And I mean, realistically, if we mandated something like this, there would definitely be legal freedom challenges there. But I think that's probably why, for all of recorded human history, uh, they have advised that you wait to have sex until you get married, and that you practice safe family planning, and that you don't have kids until you're in a relationship that's been, um, you take your vows on the altar in front of your creator together. And I think that is kind of the moral mental test, that's been practiced forever. And I'm young, don't get me wrong, I'm 25, and a lot of people my age, men and women, I'm not saying it's either or, it's both. It's a uh, it's a they oppose it just because they don't want to be restricted. And anyone who's been young, it's like mom and dad say no, and that makes me want to do it more. But it's been shown in a different light. They make it look like the reason that the Bible says that we should wait to have sex till we get married, or wait to have children until you get married. They act like that's just because they hate people and they want people to have a bad time. No, that's not. And I've learned that, thankfully, at a very young age. It's because um, anyone that you have sex with, there's a chemical called oxytocin, and so you're going to form a metaphysical bond to some degree with that person. You know, if you are with somebody sexually, you will probably have a bond with that person. Sometimes it can grow cold, where it's like you'll avoid that person if you break up. You don't want to see that person, or it's some of those people end up being very close friends for the rest of your life. But you will always form that bond. And yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of, um, not a lot, but there are groups who are opposed to contraceptives. Now, I understand completely why people have the issue with abortion, but for me, I absolutely believe in contraceptive usage and condom usage. And I think really you would be a fool not to support that. Again, you believe what you want, but I think, yeah, if you're going to have sex before marriage, you need to teach your kids and you need to promote to your kids that they should be using, condoms, contraceptive. It's like, yeah, if you're not ready to have a baby, but you're going to have sex, definitely take measures for your own health, and to not, create a new life if you're not ready for it. So I don't really go with the people who are against birth control or whatnot. But the abortion issue, that is a valid concern. That it's immoral because of the ending of a life. I get that, but I advocate for contraceptives. I think everyone should, and I think one of the worst things uh, that could ever happen is a parent not teaching their children how to practice safe sex. And I've seen studies being published where that's actually the case. Um, Condom usage is at an all-time low for people my age, and that's just horrific to see. Horrific, because most kids are not getting sex talks from their parents. And if you want to prove me right on that, just ask. If you just ask somebody who's 25, 28, did you get a sex talk from one of your parents? A lot of times they're going to say no. And so I've actually ran a poll, and all of the polls that I've run have shown that also, that they're not getting those talks. They're not being taught how to practice safe sex. There's a lot of shame around it. And you know what? Screw it. I think make the damn condoms free. And if there's anyone who's really got an issue with that, I mean, come on, we can provide food stamps, we can provide insurance to people who are on low income. We can do a lot of things with this tax money, and we can use it to traffic children, and offer debt relief to whatever migrant minority population there is. But you're telling me that we can't do something like making condoms free, in the hope, praying and hoping that maybe there won't be as many unwanted children. And you know what? I will give it to the right here. The thing about the right is they oppose abortion, fair enough, but they don't give a shit about that kid after it comes into the world. That's true. It's like, okay, you want to be against abortion, whatever. But you don't talk about the fact that you're going to have a kid that the parents don't want, and that's probably going to affect its life. So maybe, just maybe, we make condoms free, and I'm not saying it'll solve the problem, but maybe it helps bring those numbers down. All this just goes to show they don't want the problem fixed. If they wanted it fixed, the government, Jordan Maxwell said this a long time ago in one of his books, said the government always gets what the government pays for. If the government came to me, or for instance, Pastor Carner has a business that he runs. If the government came to Pastor Carner and hired his business to do something and paid him money, and let's say that he didn't deliver on one small little part, but he's already taken their money. So they're going to make his life hell. They're going to extract that money out of him any way they have to, because it's nothing personal, it's business. So, the government gets what it pays for. If they wanted the education system fixed, if they wanted the abortion issue, I won't say eliminated, but if they wanted to truly save lives, they would do it. It's like these issues are kept alive because they're great for election year. If it's election year, just heard not by experience. That's interesting. The condoms are free in the military. Yeah, great, perfect. I mean, it's like if you're going to have a bunch of horny kids running around, you probably are going to not want them having babies, because then that means that they're going to have to. I'm not sure how it works, but if you have a female soldier who gets pregnant, I mean, it's definitely going to be something that the military probably will have to either give her time off, or she'll be honorably discharged or something. I don't know how it works. I truly don't. But yeah, they're going to give away free condoms because it'll cause them more problems if their soldiers are getting pregnant or becoming fathers or mothers. All very true. But I'm kind of rambling on about these issues now. It's sad, and people don't put any credence into it. It's like, no, the Bible doesn't say these things just because they're mean or just because they hate fun. It's like, these are very, very deep concepts, and you shouldn't have children until you're ready to have them. You shouldn't have children, you shouldn't have unprotected sex if you're not ready to run the risk. And that's my philosophy in my own personal life. It's like, I would never have unprotected sex unless I say, yes, I'm ready to have a child. But everyone's got free wills, so it's like, I don't hate you if you don't. I'm just saying you're probably running a risk, and you might have to pay for that one day. Yeah, schools can give them away for free. Militaries can give them away for free. Why don't we just make them free? I mean, I would happily give the thumbs up on them wasting my tax money on that versus genocide in the Middle East, installing a microphone into a live cat, something the CIA tried to do once, cryogenics, that $22 trillion city they just built for all of the plutocrats. I would rather them just waste my money to give condoms away for free. Yeah, it's like all of these things, like, I have my stances, and I'm sure everyone in this chat has their own stance, but it's like, just because Jeffrey or Boots or R. Gertison or Edged or whatever, just because one of you guys has a something slightly different, that doesn't mean that you're wrong and I'm right. No, I'm not even claiming that I'm right. This is just a discussion. This is just the way that I think about it. But people have forgotten. I guess this is voodoo magic right here, is live and let live. And that was something I posted on Facebook, and I was like, it used to be live and let live, but now it's live and let die, and it's just a shame. It truly is. I remember just barely, it wasn't that long ago, where people could kind of get along enough, and if they didn't, they would just be like, okay, I'll just walk away. But now it's like people want to fight you if you disagree with them. So I rambled a little bit, and I'm going to make it through this second, because there's only 2 that I've done so far. And so I'm going to get this second one going. The second one's a little bit shorter. I think it's only like 20 minutes. The first one was 30 minutes. But please, as it was the case before, if you guys have any questions, it would be I'd be happy to answer them. So let's see. Yeah, Boots, that's great. He says the Congress and Senate need more free condoms so that they don't breed more demons. I will also say this. Would it be so foolish to believe that children conceived without wanting children, is it really crazy to believe there's a possibility that that might not have some spiritual impact? I mean, it's like accidental pregnancy. It's like, I wouldn't call somebody crazy for saying maybe that would impact the child in the long term. Not anything like magic wand or anything or curses, but it's like if you kind of have a kid by accident, it's like, isn't that going to rub off in the way you raise it? Probably, maybe. Just saying. There's a lot of good reasons for the things that a lot of the religions and faiths in the world in books have mentioned. So let's get going with episode 2, guys. Please, any questions you have, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
I very strongly suggest people be very careful about the TV shows they watch.
Okay, so you sent us some really quite staggering material this week. It gets into these incredibly disturbing claims about something called monarch mind control programming.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
Right.
We're talking about the alleged deliberate traumatization of children, like scientifically planned trauma.
Right, with the specific goal, according to this source, chapter02.pdf you shared, of creating separate personalities. Alters, they call them.
And these alters are supposedly walled off by amnesia, complete memory barriers between them.
It honestly sounds like something out of the darkest fiction, but this document presents it as, well, as something real.
It does. And our aim here, just to be clear, is to really dig into the methodologies described in your source, the why behind it, according to them.
Exactly. This deep dive is focused solely on unpacking chapter02.pdf. We want to understand the techniques, the supposed logic, twisted as it is, and the effects described within this document.
And I'm here to help navigate that. It's complex, deeply unsettling information.
Definitely. Okay, let's start at the core concept, which seems to be trauma. Not just trauma, but strategic, purposeful trauma.
That's precisely how the source frames it. Every act of torture, every traumatic event described, supposedly has a specific function.
A function in what? Creating the alters? Maintaining them?
Both, apparently. Creating the initial split and then reinforcing those divisions, keeping the alters separate and functional for their intended purpose. It's described as chillingly systematic.
And the source makes this, frankly, a horrifying connection to Nazi concentration camp experiments, claiming that research was about human tolerance for trauma.
For mind control.
Yeah.
Yes, the source explicitly states that. It draws a direct, disturbing line.
It paints this picture of a scientific approach, doesn't it? Lab coats, heart monitors.
Political detachment, yeah.
Yeah.
Observing a child's reactions, like noting when they assume a fetal position as a sign they've, quote, given up the will to live, is presented as cold, calculated observation during horrific abuse.
And then there's the claim about parents, specifically in the eastern U.S., being taken to Harvard, to be trained in inflicting trauma.
Allegedly, yes. Trained to administer calculated trauma at home before the children even return from supposed initial programming elsewhere. It suggests a multi-layered approach.
Followed by the idea of daily traumas just to maintain the dissociation. It sounds like constant, relentless pressure to keep the mind fractured.
That seems to be the core principle described. Constant reinforcement to prevent integration, to keep those amnesia walls strong.
Okay, so the source then zeroes in on a specific place. China Lake, California. Not OOJ, Naval Weapons Center, NWC, it's had different names.
Right, identified as a key initial programming site,
Yeah.
particularly for children from the western U.S. The source even mentions Nimitz Hospital's address code in connection with it.
And the justification, according to the source, for why there.
The claim is the base was set up to test new weapons. And these mind-controlled individuals, they were considered the weapon.
That's a chilling way to frame it. And the descriptions of what supposedly happened inside the airplane hangars.
Huge hangars, yes.
Yeah.
Allegedly filled with thousands of these small electrified cages. Woodpecker grids, they're called in the text.
For infant programming, using electric shocks.
That's the claim. Infants subjected to shocks in these grids. The source says the high voltage created a flash of light.
And that flash was used hypnotically.
Apparently. Linked to hypnotic suggestions, creating a false sense of entering another reality. They called it riding the light, tied into Peter Pan programming themes.
God, it's vile. And then after the cages.
The source states rape followed. Deliberately brutal rape as another layer of intense trauma right after the electric shock.
Just layer upon layer to break them down completely.
That seems to be the described methodology. It also mentions civilian experts, supposedly tied to the Illuminati, being involved. Even a connection to Caltech in Pasadena for research.
So a network beyond just the military, allegedly.
That's what the source suggests, yes.
Yeah.
A collaboration.
Then it moves into color programming. Red and green.
Red and green are highlighted as key, and the use of flashing lights generally to trigger dissociation.
And this is where that really wild claim comes in that the CIA introduced flashing lights into popular culture, bars, concerts.
Yeah, that's a pretty far-reaching accusation in the source, the idea being that these lights could act as environmental triggers for people programmed this way, make them susceptible.
The logistics for all this, transporting children, it must have been huge if true.
The source tries to detail that. It talks about a network, trains, planes, private cars, mentions specific places too.
Like that airstrip in Oregon. Sheridan?
Right, a former private airstrip there. A lumber mill used for housing, neighbors allegedly paid off. Also a Catholic monastery mentioned nearby, and the Union train station in Portland.
With tunnels.
Alleged underground tunnels for temporary warehousing. It paints a picture of a covert system.
And where did the children supposedly come from? This is just awful.
The sources listed are heartbreaking. Catholic adoption agencies, pregnant nuns, parents from poorer countries, even parents selling their own children.
And that group, the Finders, CIA-FBI.
Alleged to be a joint group procuring children. The source even claims some are for sacrifices. Just horrific allegations.
Then there's Santa Rosa, the FEMA airstrip.
Yes, the Santa Rosa Air Center. Unusual night flights allegedly linked to transport to China Lake, and its proximity to Bohemian Grove is noted.
Where monarch slaves were supposedly abused.
That's the claim made in the source, yes, that the airstrip facilitated transport for abuse at the Grove. Detailing these airfields is meant to show the transport network's existence.
So inside China Lake itself, what else does the source describe?
It mentions the triangular airfield layout, activity mostly in the early morning, different entry points for the children.
And the schools on base, a cover story.
Presented that way, yes, to explain the presence of children if seen. But then you get these recounted memories.
Like the one from the male victim, the hangar again.
Yeah, a large hangar, cages hanging from the ceiling this time. Someone dressed as a Catholic priest, the sound of humming electricity, and a marble altar.
With alleged sacrifices.
That's the memory recounted in the source. It also links Charles Manson's supposed initial programming to China Lake and mentions other nearby sites.
And that 1950s programming center description.
Very specific details. Flat roof, tan building, fence, a reception desk, tunnels connecting rooms, and a white programming room.
With chimps. Caged chimps.
Yes, caged chimps and a metal examining table. It's a very stark, disturbing image.
And the methods there. Lights and shocks again.
Patterns of light, low-level shocks, but coordinated with phrases.
Let's step into the darkness, or as the Luciferians spellcast, understand.
All rise.
Let's turn the key of the kingdom. Keep one eye on Sagittarius.
Love me not. Good girls ride the silvery wings. All to condition trance states linked to the electroshock experience.
It sounds like psychological torture refined to a terrifying degree.
That's certainly how it's presented. Twisting conditioning techniques.
The source names too. Post-WWII scientists.
Alleged German and British scientists and programmers at Nazis. Mengele is named Dr. Green or Greenbaum, also a Dr. Black. Dr. White identified as possibly Ewan Cameron, and a Dr. Blue.
And the Illuminati hierarchy, grandmothers, granddames.
Yes, a supposed chain of command overseeing the programming work. It describes a structured, hierarchical system.
Like the programming goals being like IEPs, individualized education programs.
That comparison is made, yes.
Yeah.
6-month goals, assessing strengths, weaknesses.
To decide their future role. Aggressive kids become generals. Gentle ones become nurses or teachers involved in programming.
That's the disturbing logic presented, channeling traits into predetermined roles within their system. And that detail about many survivors reportedly having parents who are religious leaders. It's unsettling.
And given the torture levels, they had to monitor vital signs.
The source notes that was necessary for certain procedures, yeah. It highlights how dangerous and potentially lethal this all was.
Which leads directly to the effects, PTSD, obviously.
Absolutely. Flashbacks, avoidance, panic, feeling shattered, developing negative worldviews, phobias. These are expected outcomes of such extreme trauma.
But the source says it's different for monarch victims. The PTSD is masked.
Masked by the DID, yes, and the programming itself. They allegedly create functional front alters who seem okay, interact with the world.
While the traumatized parts are hidden deep inside.
Exactly. And things like self-punishment or withdrawal, which can be trauma responses, are supposedly amplified and deliberately programmed into the alter system.
So the bad memories are actually used to maintain control.
Used to maintain the dissociation, the programming, keep the person compliant. It's described as a self-perpetuating internal prison.
The source mentions Maslow's hierarchy, keeping them from safety.
Yeah, alleging programmers intentionally work to keep victims feeling unsafe, both externally and internally.
Through monitoring systems, reporting alters.
And internal reporting alters, yes, allegedly with 1-800 numbers back to the network. And suicide programming as an ultimate control. It makes therapy incredibly difficult, the source argues.
Because they still aren't safe, even in therapy.
That's the claim. Ongoing interference, ongoing lack of safety, which is why the term survivor is questioned in the text.
And programmers can just shatter alters, create new ones.
Allegedly, yes. And victims can be programmed to abuse themselves using their own alters and specific memory codes or triggers. It's total internal control. The complexity described is immense. Multiple personality systems are inherently complex, but this adds layers of deliberate external structuring.
The source gets into the brain itself then, its complexity.
Right, emphasizing the vastness of our neural network. And claiming a monarch brain is even more active, juggling alters and hemispheres.
And the hidden observer, a deep awareness.
It introduces that concept, but immediately twists it. Claims there's a demonic entity using that name, working with the programmer.
Whoa, okay, that's a significant injection of the supernatural.
It is. The source often blends psychological claims with occult or demonic elements. It also says programmers set up false cores and protectors, hiding the real core self.
How do they allegedly start the splitting process, exploiting natural fears?
That's the claim. Using genetically predisposed fears, snakes, spiders putting a child in a box with them to cause the initial fragmentation.
And telling them to play dead.
Yes, allegedly to instill dissociation. This isn't happening to me. And lay the groundwork for suicide programming later on.
It's not just physical trauma either, is it?
No, the source lists emotional and spiritual trauma too. Things like blood orgies, medieval torture devices, staged events with actors playing authority figures, near-drowning experiences.
And the trained animals. Chimps at Nazis, Mengele's dogs.
Yes, specific disturbing claims about trained animals used sadistically, chimpanzees with specific roles, Mengele using German shepherds, and involvement in horrific birth-related traumas.
Just relentless wire restraints and rituals, recruiting sadists.
The source claims sadists were specifically recruited. It even cites studies suggesting males can be taught sadism. And then the Mothers of Darkness alters as a supposed counterweight to male programmers becoming too sadistic.
A kind of internal regulation within the horror.
That seems to be the implication. Other tortures listed include sensory deprivation, forced labor, poisoning, rape, controlling basic bodily functions.
And specific tortures for specific goals, tongue cutting for silence.
Exactly. Induced vomiting for eating disorders, dislocating shoulders to make dissociation easier, instant torture for crying. It's presented as brutal conditioning.
The black mass around age 3.
Mentioned as a foundation for dark side programming, and then traumas designed to leave no marks.
Like holding arms out, tickling, saltwater tanks.
Yes, sensory deprivation tanks with motion sensors, being put in burial caskets with insects, things causing immense fear but no visible injury.
Making it deniable, untraceable.
Precisely. The monarch butterfly programming itself is described graphically. Forced leg spreading, rape, associated terms like honeycomb, hallelujah.
And punishments like fishhooks, genital mutilation.
For not learning correctly. Absolute dominance and terror.
This would absolutely destroy trust in other people.
The source says that's a key outcome, compounded by programming to isolate the victim. Then there are environmental traumas, water, caves, sand.
Being lowered into pits, black holes.
It's described as a frequent trauma. The source also mentions the Illuminati's supposed historical emphasis on water torture.
Get specific medical traumas.
Starvation, water deprivation leading to hallucinations, forced exercise and sleep deprivation apparently to induce endorphin release and robotic states, and inverted sustension.
Linked to Mengele again. And reversing pain pleasure.
Yes, the claim is inverted suspension, allegedly experimented with by Mengele, could lead to beta alters perceiving pain as pleasure, creating S&M kitten alters who believe pain is love.
That's profoundly disturbing manipulation.
It is. Then there's porcelain face programming, wax masks, fire torture.
To implant a new mask personality, hiding abuse memory.
Allegedly used by charismatic satanic networks, yes. Hypnotically implanting a new face, a new persona. Ritual trauma on birthdays is mentioned as especially damaging due to repetition.
And sexual abuse in rituals being amplified by the context. Demonic magic.
Creating a false sense of obligation, making the abuse seem like part of something powerful and inescapable.
Cosmetic trauma, too. Implants, removing moles.
Yes, and stage tricks, like multi-needle devices to create scars on command, like the goat of Mende's head activated hypnotically.
So the mind splits as a defense, like a soldier dissociating.
That's the analogy used. This isn't happening to me. Walling off the trauma. But the programmers allegedly direct this natural defense.
They decide what the new part will be. 12 white fluffy kittens.
That's the example given, yes. They allegedly dictate the alter's form and function. Using truth serum to check, consulting the demonic hidden observer.
There's that supernatural element again.
It weaves through the narrative. An alternative model is also presented, though.
Not a full split, but memory sections.
Dividing personal memory with amnesia walls. Each trauma memory gets sectioned off, given cues, names, jobs. But skills, talents, generally accessible to all alters in the system.
Memory storage linked to brain state, hormones.
Right, like adrenaline during trauma, affecting how memories are encoded. But an alter might be blocked from using a skill if it conflicts with their programming, like a non-sexual alter in intimacy.
And maintaining it requires trance logic.
Constant reinterpretation to make the conflicting internal realities seem coherent. The source mentions Oren's concept of trance logic. Briefly touches on Brodmann areas 912 for personality, the reticular formation for consciousness.
Saying the programming controls emotional links, not damages the brain areas directly.
That seems to be the idea. Memories are nested behind amnesia walls, altered states. Electroshock scrambles filing, fragmenting memories across alters.
So you need multiple alters to piece together one event.
That's the claim. And memory retrieval is best in the original trauma environment. Body memory is storing trauma in sensory motor ways.
And false memory syndrome is dismissed.
As CIA damage control, according to the source, the core is seen as the intact original self, the synthesizing self that tries to manage internal conflicts.
But programmers guide alter formation for their needs, not just the victim's adaptation.
Exactly. It's directed development. The source even claims the brain physically grows differently in multiples, with different EEG profiles for alters.
Hippocampus, frontal cortex for event memory, neocortex for general knowledge.
Standard neuroscience concepts applied here. The source stresses the brain's vast memory capacity, but says hypnosis can simply label memories as forgotten. Slaves are under constant suggestion to forget, but the brain secretly records.
It's an incredibly detailed model of alleged control. Then, anchoring.
Crucial concept. All programming anchored to trauma. A foundational trauma watched, filmed, coded.
Like father-daughter incest for beta programming.
Given as a key example, incest allegedly used a standard for Mariah's slaves to sever the core, create that anchor. Mentions Rothschild demanding incest in the family.
And that bond is the hardest to break.
In alleged Illuminati slaves, yes. The incestuous father bond. This anchor isn't some beast computer, it's a core traumatic memory.
And bringing thousands of alters out at once for reprogramming.
Suggested as a way to work faster, using shared anchors and imagery.
Then smells. Olfactory trauma.
Linking blood and perhuman magic. creating ritual smells to trigger trance or dissociation.
Like burning flesh at ritual.
Alleged common smell causing dissociation. Mentions historical notes on scents, cinnamon and deeper programming, the smell of waste for caged children, and alpha in urine as a sexual trigger.
Using every sense.
Apparently. Mariah's knowledge of scents, perfumes, and astral magic. It suggests a comprehensive sensory approach.
What about failed moonchild traumas? Autism.
A very speculative claim in the source. Suggests trauma in utero sometimes leads to autism as a mental retreat, a failed mind control outcome.
Yeah.
Links it to genetics, high IQ.
Says autistic children were discarded.
Until about 20 years prior to the source writing, yes. References Donna Williams' work, suggesting autism might involve acute sensory perception, making them unsuitable duds.
But acknowledges multiple causes for autism.
It does. But the authors state their belief is that the rise in autism is linked to increased trauma-based mind control. Also suggests MS as a possible side effect from brainstem scarring. Highly controversial claims. Very much so. Not mainstream scientific views.
Then a quick mention of a ritual device. Wood. Spider symbol.
Yes, a specific description. Made of special wood, maybe myrtle, painted spider, between satanic symbols.
And a summary of splitting. Personality elements stripped. Programmers assign new ones.
Right. Reiteration that memory is divided, but other brain parts function. Monarch control combines observed phenomena dissociation, denial refined into control methods.
Finally, the rituals themselves. Illuminati rituals based on mystery religions.
That's the claim. Rothschilds favoring Canaanite, others Druidic, while noting Druids historically became Christian. Then includes imagery from the Papyrus of Kina.
Egyptian gods. Anubis, Osiris, Isis.
Yes, depictions from an ancient Egyptian text included, seemingly to provide historical context for ritual traditions, without directly linking those specific images to modern practices described earlier.
Wow, okay. That was a lot. An incredibly intense dive into chapter 02.pdf.
It really is. Profoundly disturbing material.
Key takeaways seem to be this alleged, systematic, almost scientific application of trauma, the goal of creating controllable alters via dissociation, fundamentally erasing identity.
And what's striking, I think, is the internal logic presented by the source. However horrific, it attempts to lay out a coherent system where every piece, every trauma supposedly has a purpose. Analyzing that claimed logic is key.
It definitely leaves you thinking. The potential scale mentioned, the difficulty of ever identifying this, if it were real, the long-term impact. It's overwhelming to consider based on this source.
It forces you to confront some very dark possibilities about control, trauma, and the human mind's limits. Even setting aside the specific claims, it makes you ponder the nature of extreme.
So that was the end of it. I just want to kind of give a few little bullet points. I know you guys, some of you guys are tired. As I go on these first little, I think maybe there's one more chapter that kind of is meant to define, outline, and get everyone to understand what is meant by the terms and what this project is, which many of the people and regulars to this channel, you guys already know this is real and you already have these concepts. My goal is I would like to try and use the information from that book, but I would like to try and make people see that these are much more natural dynamics that happen more than you would think. So just one that I use all the time is an abusive relationship. If you've ever been in an abusive relationship or ever seen somebody in an abusive relationship, it doesn't have to be a romantic one. It could be a parental relationship. It can be a friend. Drop something. It could be a relationship, a peer at school, something like that. Any type of abusive relationship is what is going on here. Anyone who has ever gone to jail or spent time in prison, same thing. A street gang, a mafia. All of these systems are in a book I'm writing, more to come on that later, is that this is all rooted on secrecy to breed fear. And that's what I would like to try and get people to understand. I want people to understand that these things are all over, and it's a spirit because it happens without you consciously, it may seem when you talk about these things that there's some guy in a cloak somewhere in the corner and he's got a master plan to enslave person XYZ. It's not quite like that. It's that you find yourself in a group dynamic. Usually these are groups, more than one person. So 2 to 3 people, that's a small group dynamic. But the people in that group don't necessarily have to plan any of this. It's like a dark spirit takes over this group, rooted on temptation, rooted on lies, primarily to yourself and then others. That is how this happens, and that's where the spiritual aspect of it comes in. The spiritual aspect comes in when you realize these people might not really know what's going on, but if you can train yourself to understand how these dynamics work on a basic level, again, you don't have to spend the time that I do, but it's secrecy, trauma, and fear. That is the negative call to action in men. The positive call to action is love out of faith. Those are the only two things that really motivate people to change their lives and the lives of people around them. If I'm a person who loves people enough to give them something, let's say you stop and you give somebody, a homeless person on the side of the road, some money or whatever, just out of charity, because that's a person. I've got $5 in my pocket. It's not like I'm doing it to get something to come back to me. At that point, when you give and you do it out of love, usually it will come back to you. But the irony and the key is that you can't do it for that. Like, you can't say, okay, well, there's a homeless guy. Now let me go ahead and give him the $5 so that I'll get something to happen to me. No, you have to do it with good intentions out of faith and love. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 1 billion trillion percent correct. School system is the military calls it basic training. It's the basic training for the youth. It really does. And it's unexcusable that we have a country, United, and unfortunately, the United States is very, very bad on this. I look forward to talking to people outside of the United States, Europeans, Australians, New Zealand, any country really. And I've met people out of Africa who have better grammar, reading skills, ability to speak than some of the people I've seen in my own country. And that is, again, I'm glad that everyone can read and whatnot in all of those countries. But it's like, why is America struggling so badly? That and the prison system. It's like, why do third world countries have their prison systems figured out better than we do? And it's money. Money is the reason, but the love of money is the root of all evil. That's an important distinction, and I've probably said that a lot here before. It's that money, the love of which is the root of all evil. And I personally believe that means addiction plays a role in it. Addiction to something, need for something that bad that you give in to temptation and you tell yourself lies, and then you're wrapped up in a tangled web before you know it. That's why Shakespeare called it that, a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. It's because first you scratch his back and he scratches yours. And first it's something simple. Oh, I cheated on my girlfriend. Don't tell her, keep my secret. Well, now I kept your secret. And maybe a couple months down the line, I do the same thing. And I kept your secret. And now you're going to keep my secret. Or it's all going to come crumbling down. And before you know it, 10 years later, this is a hypothetical situation, but you and your high school buddy have covered each other's asses quite a few times, and lo and behold, 10 years later, he goes to jail because he's beat the crap out of his wife, and they're going to press charges. And so he says, hey man, we've covered up a lot of shit for each other, so I was at your house and blah blah blah. It gets out of control fast. And then because he helped you with that, maybe he ends up beating his wife and killing her one day. And I just hope you see where I'm going here, because that is how this works. There's nothing, it doesn't have to be a secret uh, Satan statue and candles. It doesn't have, it can be, don't get me wrong. That's absolutely real in some cases, but it does not have to be. Ritual abuse. A ritual is a repeating step of logic. So, for instance, if every single day that I wake up and I go and I make something to eat for breakfast, and wake up about the same time, and then take a shower before you go to work. Then you go to work at, you're supposed to be there at, let's say, 9 in the morning. That's ritualistic. You're doing the same thing every day on a schedule. And if you've ever found yourself saying, "Oh, here we go again," just an example, you and your wife or your husband or something, it's like you've had the same argument because he or she is making the same stupid mistakes, and you keep getting pissed because it's like, we've done this too many times. Why are we repeatedly doing this? So we've been together X amount of years and we are still doing this. That's ritualistic, and it's a program. Human nature's programmable. Pavlov and his dog. Ring the bell, give the dog food. Ring the bell, give the dog food. After a while, the dog is going to learn this. It will become conditioned. And so this can happen with those logic loops. So if every payday, every time someone gets a paycheck, well, every time they get the paycheck, they're going to take $100 and they're going to go blow it on something, and this happens every time, and it pisses the wife off, pisses the husband off, whatever. And then you get into a big argument, and it always spirals out of control, but it happens on payday. That's a trigger. These things are so much more common. It's just they've begun to look at them with scientific language, with psychology, and whatnot. But ritual abuse doesn't just mean black mass. It doesn't mean cloaks. It doesn't mean candles and stuff. Ritual abuse means abuse that happens repeatedly, over and over again, and eventually it gets buried into the subconscious, and that is programming. Now, where this gets eerie is that anyone who knows anything about Unix computing or Linux, which I've used a little bit in my time as a web developer, there's a daemon. It's called a daemon, and it's a background program. It's like if you have, like I'm on Windows, if I was to open up Task Manager, you could scroll through your Task Manager on Windows, and you'll see all these background daemons, is what they're called. And that's what, in my opinion, the true reality of a demon is. It's that it's a subconscious, which means you're not aware of it consciously. It happens in the back of your mind. And that's why they're very hard to break out of, because you have to first learn that it's there, and then you have to break the conditioning or break the habit. Let's see. Well, I appreciate that comment, Boots, because that's a positive. Again, duality is a real thing. So it's everything in as a matter of fact, a couple days ago, might have been Monday or Tuesday, Pastor Carner called me and we were talking about some stuff, and I eventually we got to talking about, you're looking into a lot of these dark subjects, and so how do you make that something where you can still find the light at the end of it? And I use specifically the examples. If I go and I get a shovel and I dig a hole, I dig out some dirt, well, I'm going to dig down and that hole is going to get deep, and that's the depths of evil on this planet and on Earth. The evil is evil. It is a dark pit. But that dirt, you're going to throw it back, and so there's going to be a big pile behind you of the dirt you've dug out. So there's the duality. One goes up, the other goes down. So just as evil as this world may be, that goes to show you, ultimately me, I'm speaking from my experiences, it goes to show me that there must be some like opposite positive, generative, creative love power, God. So that's the way I see it. And maybe it's rooted in energy and thermodynamics. And I think there's a valid way to look at these things in terms of heat and energy. But all of this because of Boots. It's like, sure. And you know what? Hell, maybe sometimes it's like one of them spends a little bit too much on the grandkids because of good intentions. But it's good. It's that you're benefiting, you're lifting up, you're building memories for your grandkids. But you know what? That is what these people are doing, but they have inverted it. So instead of, you remember that time grandma and grandpa got you that really nice bike or something? That's a really good positive memory, and they'll tell they're going to tell their grandchildren about that memory. But remember that time grandpa beheaded someone in front of me, and then it's like there's always a positive and a negative. But these are very real things. These are very real concepts. And that's what I want people to understand. So because of that, I think being aware of these things is the only way that we can ever really hope to avoid them. And I always tell people, never go around saying that I can't be programmed. I can't do that. You will always have the ability to be programmed. You can just be resistant to it. And as far as what I was saying just a minute ago about the demons versus daemons, a demon is a background subconscious programming loop. The reason they're so hard to break is because you have to be made aware of them in and of yourself, and then you have to break a habit. So it's double trouble. See, the word damnation, a person's been damned, the souls of the damned, damnation, eternal damnation. It's like a river dam. So one's life is destined to be like a mighty flowing river, increasing in strength, goodness, and glory over time. That's one of many reasons that Jesus is connected to water symbolically. So if you dam someone's river of Christ, if you stop it up, if you block it, you've halted progression. And that's what damnation really means. And so, back to this daemon. If demons, Satan, can get you stuck in insanity loops, that's what you're looking at here. Insanity loops, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'll be real with you guys. I did drugs before, and I would always sit there and beat myself up. I would say, why am I doing the same stupid crap? And I know that I know what's going to happen. I know I'm wasting money, but I just keep going around and around. And it's like, I'm a piece of crap because I do drugs. And so I get sad. But now that I'm sad, I have to go get more drugs to not be sad anymore. That is circular reasoning. And that is one of the primary indicators of a spell, quote unquote. It is that which damns you. It is if that you're running in circles, expecting different results, and you're insane. You're not going anywhere. So you're damned. You're stopped up the river. That is my belief, and I'm not saying this is the truth. That is my understanding thus far, working thoughts of what a demon really is. What men have called demons. Again, let's say the Bible 3,000 years ago, they had no concept of any of this. They didn't have words for it, but now we understand it differently. We have computers and we have daemon background processes. And that's what I think demons are. I think it's just something that's buried deeply inside of you, usually with trauma, that becomes subconscious, that sticks you in a loop of insanity that you can hardly know is there, and that you beat yourself up over, and you wonder, why the hell do I keep doing this? Why do I keep doing this even though I don't want to? That is a damn good indicator that you've got a demonic presence. I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but you guys, if you get tired of it, you can always leave. But these guys are still here, so that tells me that you guys like what I got to say. Boots says, yeah, that's true. I can always borrow money back from the grandkids. Well, you know what? That's going to be what it's about. It's going to be about that, not just money, but it's like, okay, you know what? God forbid you work your whole life and, push yourself and make a little bit of money, God willing, enough to have the money to spoil your grandkids. So you know what? It's like, do it, because you're not doing it just so they'll loan you $20 later down the line. But you will be rewarded with that because you selflessly, lovingly did that. Yeah, that's why, that's why you be a good parent to your kids. It's the way of the world. And I remember in AP psychology, our teacher said, he was brilliant guy. And if it wasn't for my AP psychology teacher, I probably would not be interested or have a mind like I do now. He was very influential on me and a lot of others. He's very skilled, very smart guy. And he said, the way that it's supposed to be is that you have kids and you raise your children and you dedicate your younger years to them and give your life into them. But for all of human history, the deal was that those children would nurse the parents into the grave. It's like, okay, now that the parents are elderly, the kids would help their parents the way that their parents raised them. That was the way of the world. And I was talking to one of my parents, my dad, and I said, it's a very new thing that generational wealth was split up. For instance, a family would have a business and they would have everybody in the family working at this business, and they would build some type of generational trade, business, whatever. It wasn't until like very, very recently that this idea of I don't know what would we call it now. It's a new idea that we just have people slaving at jobs. There you go. And yes, let's see. Sometimes I'm rambling and I try to glance over. Yeah, it sounds like you got smart kids. Sounds like your great grandparents. Applied psychology. It is a little bit. It is a little bit of psychology. God, I don't know. These get to a point where they become more theological and psychological. All of these things go together, in my opinion. And Claire said she's caring for an elderly parent. And it's like, truly, I do understand. It's like, for instance, if they can't, they're having real issues where they can't necessarily move, or they can't, they're going in and out of the hospital multiple times a week or something. Like I understand that sometimes it's not possible to do that all the way until the very end. But I think that where you have the ability, you should give as much of that ability as you can. Because that is what it's like your parents, maybe they couldn't have bought you the nicest shoes, but they still bought you the shoes they could. So it's like, that's just the way of the world. Oh, I did not know that. So when I said AP, actually what I meant was advanced placement. It's like a program that they do in high school. You have to decide to, instead of regular psychology, you would decide to take an advanced placement AP, and you would get college credit if you did well enough on the final test. That would be worth the college credit that you earned in high school. But usually, like, for instance, the regular psychology class, they had guided notes, and it's like the tests were much easier, and you didn't have to try as hard. And somewhere around here, I've got a notebook. We got a big textbook, big thick textbook. There was no real homework except that you needed to take notes from that textbook. So I pretty much got a whole copy of the textbook from that class in just like an outline format. But you had to try, and the tests were, they had an essay section. You had to write about 4 paragraphs. And Jesus Christ, today you are asking a child to jump across the Grand Canyon if you ask them to write a paragraph. So I don't know how they're ever going to write 4 paragraphs. But yeah, it was tough. But you know what? The teacher was good, and he made it fun, because instead of sitting there and filling in blanks and copying guided notes, like, we were actually talking. I had learned about the Stanford Prison experiment. I had learned about the Milgram experiment. Those 2 experiments, as a matter of fact, are probably some of the most important ever. I've referenced those and researched those quite literally multiple times over and over in depth, because those explain so much of what we're seeing today. I learned about those. We had to do profiles, so I recognize a lot of the names from psychology: B.F. Skinner, Freud, Carl Jung, a couple more that I recognize. And so, yeah, it was a good basic introduction, but I come to learn that psychology was very important. So I will watch people, just, if I'm out with friends or if I'm just out in public, I'm a people watcher, so I'll just watch people interact. It's like I'll watch people, their body language. I'll watch the way that they, move their face. It's like you can see, is somebody angry? Is somebody scared? Stuff like that. And in my own life, it's like, I grew up watching, people in my family, they would butt heads sometimes. And my parents, they went through a divorce, and I watched that. And I learned to integrate that information. And that's what psychology is about. But it's helped me greatly in all these other subject areas too. Let's see. Said, I remember my grandparents told you we're going to give someone. Wait, hold up. She's going to. I can't read that, Boots. Am I confused? It says, I remember my grandparents told you give something to someone to give from your heart, not your ass. If you're going to give someone something, give from your heart, not your ass. Okay, fair enough. I think that's what you meant. You've had psychology classes, absolutely. The observer, yeah, and that's a very interesting thing. The observer, say something with your voice. So say some sentence with your voice, and then say the same thing in your own head without opening your mouth. Which one is really you? It's a trick question, because you are not the voice that you're speaking. You're not your inner voice, but you are the observer. You're the one who knows the difference. You're the one who knows which voice was used to say that sentence. So yeah, but I'm surprised I've been rambling and we put two of those clips together. It's been almost 2 hours. That's wild. But guys, I'm probably going to sign off and close this out. I'm getting tired. It's uh, I don't know. I'm on the East Coast, so I don't know how many of you are on the West Coast. I think James said only a few people were on the West Coast with him, so I'm tired. But let's see. Tomorrow and Saturday, I don't know. I think James will be back Sunday, but I don't know if he'll be doing the show Sunday or if I'll be doing this show Sunday. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to try to put together something to teach. To you guys, just something interesting. I'll find an interesting topic and go down a rabbit hole and present it to you guys, uh, and then we'll find something cool to do while he's gone. He had mentioned, and I had thought it would be a good idea that maybe we'll do like a super cut of some of James's most interesting ideas and points, and then I'll just kind of give you my commentary on them. Um, really, I just come and chat with you guys and try to teach you something cool. Um, I appreciate all the regulars. I truly do. Trying to think if there's anything else I should mention. No, I was going to say on my Substack, I'm publishing. So technically, these are something that I'm offering to like people who subscribe for the monthly membership. So it's $5 per month, or it's $50 for the year, which is it's pretty cheap because I don't think I would feel comfortable charging more than that. But I offer a lot of them for free sometimes. So not all of them are paid. I like to give some of them away for free. But if you guys would like to check that out, I'm offering those now, and I'm doing them quite regularly, multiple times a week. Um, so if you guys would like to check that out, it's theofficialurban.substack.com. Let me actually just send that in the chat. Right there. If you want to check that out, you don't have to pay for anything. Most of the content on the site is free. You just put in your email and it's a newsletter. But if anyone is genuinely interested in that stuff, I'd be happy to give a free month to you, so you guys could try it and see. So I'd be happy to do that. All you need to do is ask me, and I'm happy to do it. And then the series on Fritz Springmeier's book, we're going to do that once per week on Wednesdays. Not on this channel, it'll be on Substack, it'll be on my YouTube channel. And we'll just do that until we're done with the whole book. And depending on how well that turns out, I might put together a list of other books that we can do similar things with, because I think there's a lot of good material out there. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have the time, attention span to make it through these books. So I want to make it as digestible as possible, and that's my goal. But I appreciate everyone showing up tonight. I appreciate it more than you guys would imagine. I truly honored to have the experience here on this channel, mainly because James is he's a solid and he's a real Christian. I mean that because his thinking behind it is that contagious happiness and love. It's like he's always got a good pep in his voice, in his step. He's always got a smile on his face. He can always leave you in a better mood than you were in before. And to him, to James, that is what Christianity and the Holy Spirit and Jesus is all about. And I agree with that. And I see him put that into action. So one, I'm thankful to be here for him because I respect him greatly. And I've told him that. I said a lot of people nowadays, honestly, a lot of people don't give advice that you would feel compelled to take. But I told him, I said, I value your advice, and I would definitely take your advice. And I'm thankful to be here because every single time I'm here, and I think I did my first show on this channel guest hosting for James in August of last year. And every single time I've guest hosted for you guys, all of you guys have shown up. There have been a few new people who've shown up. But yeah, you guys have always been here. And what that means is that you guys value this channel in your own way. And it's taught me and taught James that we really don't care if we have 500 billion trillion followers. It's like James doesn't do this for the money. I can tell you that. You know, he's not concerned at all with the money from doing these shows. On the Pope, I did not see the American coming. I did not see them choosing an American. I thought it was going to be the Patriarch of Jerusalem. That was my bet. I would have liked Toggle, the Asian guy. So it's interesting that they've elected an American. Maybe we will talk about that on Sunday if I'm here, and give him a few days to cement himself and give me some time to stick a thermometer in it and see what we've got going on there. I'm surprised with an American, and I was kind of glad he chose the name Leo because I'm a Leo, the lion. So all in all, you know, I'm not Catholic, but I do have great respect for the Catholic people, not so much the Vatican itself. And I do know that there are some good priests out there still. One, if you guys have never heard of him, Father Chad Ripperger, I think is how you say it. I have some of his clips on my website as well. He's very well studied. He's got, in my opinion, he seems to have really great intentions. And a lot of times these priests are very well aware that the church has got a lot of corruption in it, and they believe that they have a responsibility to their parishioners, and that they are going to shepherd their flock through this dangerous, corrupt church territory. And I respect that of them. And so I can't say that all Catholic people are bad. I can't say all Muslim people are bad. No, I can't. I never will. It's just I cannot say that they're all bad people. And that speaks for something to me. So we'll see. We'll see what he does with the church. But guys, I appreciate it. Appreciate all of you. We'll see you back here again tomorrow night, same time. And I'll surprise you with something cool. But I appreciate y'all. Have a good night, guys. Peace.